Welcome to my channel Livestock Products Technology. Today, as you know, we are talking a series of lectures on handling, processing, preservation of fish processing and fish products. So today topic is overall about fish processing, that includes the handling and processing of raw fish, including the dressing of fish, the immediate storage, then preservation methods in general, and processing. Some of the methods both are for processing and preservation, and finally some more methods about the value addition and ready to eat fish products. Especially little bit we will talk about the microbial preservation or fermentation and pickling, and few latest modern preservation methods we will talk very briefly. First, let us understand what is fish processing. The term fish processing refers to all the processes associated with fish and fish products from the time the fish is caught or harvested until the time it is reaching to the consumer. So all the process together are called as fish processing. Many of them are for preservation, many of them for further preservation and further processing. Although the term refers specifically to fish but includes all aquatic organisms coming from the wild fisheries or harvested from aquaculture or fish farming. Although there are many traditional processing techniques for aquatic organisms, we can group them into fresh fish processing, salting, smoking, canning, freezing, and few more modern methods for preservation or further processing. In continuation about fish processing, the different processing methods, as I mentioned, the canning, drying, smoking, etc. If applied properly to the fish as soon as the fish is caught, it can enhance the shelf life from months to years depending on the methods used. So these methods I have already discussed separately as individual lecture on drying, on curing, on smoking, and on canning. The processed fish can be transported to the distant places without the risk of spoilage and food poisoning, because it takes care about the prevention of spoilage, and also it takes care about eliminating all foodborne or fishborne pathogens. The fish processing can be subdivided into fish handling, that is the first part of handling the raw fish, and also their dressing and cleaning of the fish. Briefly we will discuss it today, which is a preliminary processing of raw fish, and the manufacture of fish products, that is most of the modern methods like canning or smoking. They are both preservation and processing, which we have discussed in separate lectures already. Here we can have a glimpse of fish processing industry. We can see the preparation of frozen fish for long-term storage. There is chilling also, which we have discussed in separate lectures. There is canned fish, which is a very special high temperature processing for a very long-term storage up to 3 years, which we have discussed in separate lecture. Then there is drying of fish, which is a very old and common traditional method, but now there are many modern practice by using the oven and other sun drying methods, which again we have discussed in separate lectures. Then there is the fish waste and byproducts, which is specially I will discuss in a separate lecture. And sometimes there is a preparation of fish meal, that is mostly for non-edible or a low quality fish, which is processed through rendering and made into fish meal, and we will discuss it separately in another lecture. So once again, let us understand why fish processing. The raw and fresh fish are given different treatments through different processing methods for the purpose of two. One is for storage and increasing the shelf life, which could be short time or long time. Particularly whenever there is excess fish, we may not be able to consume or we may not be able to market it. So it should be able to stay for longer period, for long term marketing, or to send it to different other places. That is one of the major purpose of processing, that is the long term storage. And the second is enhancing the sensory characteristics or making some variety in the eating qualities. So that is the other aspect of processing. The common techniques in such fish processing include canning, that is for a long-term storage; smoking, it is also a chemical kind of preservation and gives very special kind of flavor; salting is a old method for very easy process storage; and drying by different methods, which again remove the moisture and it can be stored easily very long time; and the fermentation, where by microbial application we can increase the shelf life. Here briefly we will discuss about the fish processing scenario in India. Actually, India is having a very large fishery resources and it is ranking third in the world. However, the processing of fish into different products is considerably less in Indian condition. Of late there is lot of improvement. Processing of fish into canned and frozen forms is carried out almost entirely for the export market. The units in the fish processing sector are largely small scale proprietary or partnership farms or fishermen cooperatives. So nowadays there is emphasis to form fishermen cooperatives for better processing and marketing. In the last 10 years, the corporate sector has increased its operations in preservation, processing and export of coastal fish in India. So there is fast changes in the processing and marketing of fish and in the export. Here we will see about the raw fish processing, that is about the processing of raw fish by cutting, cleaning or dressing. The first step is receiving and cleaning. The fish are received, washed and may be graded by size. The second step is preliminary processing. This may involve removing eyes, washing, then head removal and then evisceration. The third step is filleting and cutting. So here fish are cut into fillets or other desired shape and size. Then fourth is skinning and pin boning. So many time in case of bigger fish the skin is removed and sometime the bones are also removed by modern specialized machines. And then finally there is packaging and storage. So fish are packaged using various methods and stored at appropriate temperature to maintain quality. So this is about the initial processing. Now for further processing, this fish will be used for different kind of processes which we discussed, like canning or smoking, etc. So here once again we can see the fish handling operations. First is the sorting or grading, then the dressing, that is removing the head and the gut by evisceration, then cutting and then skinning, then pre-cooking, then braiding, then spicing, filleting, salting, packing. So these are the processing operations in case of fish, as I have already discussed. So here again about the raw fish processing, one important practice is filleting and freezing of fish. So this is a very high quality product for a high price market. The flesh cut parallel to the backbone of the fish, and fishes like milkfish, catfish, perches, mullets, carps, eel, etc. are very suitable for filleting and freezing. Filleting can be done by hand manually, which is economical, or by using a filleting machine. Fillets may be with or without skin, that is initially we can remove the skin and do the filleting. Sometime it is with skin, but without skin it makes a higher price and in the luxury market. Fillets are sometimes dipped in brine solution, that is the salt solution, for improving their appearance, and that will reduce the amount of drip and also gives a salty flavor. The freezing of fillets can be done individually, that is the individual quick freezing which we have discussed earlier in the freezing lecture, or it can be frozen as a block. The value addition is another important aspect of fish processing. As I mentioned, fish processing includes both processing and preservation. So few of the important areas I will mention here in value addition, like filleting and cutting, preparing fish into convenient forms like fillets or steaks, then skinning and pin boning. So many times skin is removed, bone is removed, and the boneless fish is made into more valuable product for high price sale. Then there is value added products which is made from the boneless fish by modern processing like sausages, balls, nuggets. So these are ready to eat fish products. And then there is processing of fish waste or fishery byproducts. So here we are going to have a separate lecture on this. Here either the non-edible part like viscera, the bone, skin, fins, all these things can be processed into valuable products, and sometime from the large bones and skin we can make glue and gelatin. Sometimes the non-edible fish or low quality fish can be processed into fish meal, which has got a very high use in the livestock feeding, etc. Now we will discuss about the preservation techniques, or some of them are both preservation and processing techniques. So firstly it is icing and chilling, which is purely for preservation. So this is for maintaining low temperature to slow down microbial growth and enzymatic activity. The next is the freezing, which is for long-term storage, which extend the shelf life by significantly reducing water activity and inhibiting microbial growth completely. So here we can store the fish for 6 months or even more by keeping at -18 or -20 degrees Celsius. Then drying, which is a more common and traditional method, but which is modernized nowadays by using mechanical ovens or solar drying ovens or even freeze drying. So here the moisture is removed and thereby the microbial growth is completely stopped and the spoilage is prevented and it can be preserved. The salting, again a most old and traditional method of preservation, but nowadays along with salt so many other chemicals like phosphates, nitrates, etc. are added. They draw the moisture and inhibit the bacterial growth and act as preservation. And another old method is the smoking, where both partial drying and smoking and cooking takes place. It is done by burning the hard wood, and which gives a preservative chemicals in the smoke, and it also gives a special flavor of smoking. So this drying, salting, smoking, freezing, chilling, everything we have discussed separately in each lectures. In continuation about preservation and processing techniques, the freeze drying, as I already mentioned, along with freezing, this is a modern method of freezing and drying. So here first it is frozen and then it is dried by sublimation. So it is a very high quality product, but it is costly. So this makes a very best rehydration and product quality and long shelf life. Then the canning, it is, as I mentioned, it's a old method which is for long-term storage. It is done by sterilization, first preliminary heating and processing, and then sealed in a container and sterilized. So it is for long-term storage even up to 3 years. Then there is a modern packaging techniques for long-term storage like vacuum packaging and modified atmosphere packaging. Here the inert gas is inserted in case of modified atmosphere packaging like nitrogen high level and the carbon dioxide at high level, or in case of vacuum the complete air is removed. So both of them can increase the shelf life by preventing the microbial growth. And the other modern techniques like high pressure processing, pulsed light processing, irradiation and electromagnetic field processing, these are some of the most modern processing techniques and for preservation. So this part we will have a separate lecture later again. Since we have already discussed all other techniques separately in each lectures like curing, drying, smoking, freezing. So here today we will discuss only one or two remaining techniques. That is, one is microbiological preservation or fermentation, another is preservation by pickling. So microbial preservation, here a method of tackling the growth of undesirable microorganism by favoring the growth of competitive and antagonist microorganisms. So here some group of organisms like lactic acid bacteria are most widely used. The growth of these lactic acid bacteria is leading to the fermentation, and it is attributed to their competition with the undesirable microbes. So all the spoilage microbes or the pathogenic microbes are prevented to grow because of the growth of this lactic acid bacteria, because they produce some antimicrobial metabolites and thereby prevent the growth of other organisms. So here we will understand little bit more about the fermentation, that is the microbial preservation. So these fermented fish have been considered is very important and popular in Southeast Asian countries. So they are called as Southeast Asian product, and they are mostly popular in these countries. Fermented fish products are prepared by salting and fermenting the fish to convert the flesh into simple components. So the fish get fermented and it becomes very simple digested or liquefied product. Fish fermentation lasts for 3 to 9 months. So it takes a long time, and the flesh liquefy or becomes like a paste. So most of the time for the fermentation, the fish after proper processing is added with the lactic acid bacteria culture and sealed in some porcelain containers or mud containers, and they are generally kept even below the ground and allowed this fermentation for a long time. So these are very common in China, Japan, Korea and other Southeast Asian countries. The fermented fish means any fishy product having degradative changes due to enzymatic and microbial activity. So all the microbial growth and their enzymatic activity and also the endogenous enzymes in the fish work in digesting the fish material, and it becomes almost semi-solid or liquid. So in continuation of fermentation, some common fermented fish products are nuoc man in Vietnam and nampla of Thailand and sushi of Japan, which is very popular, and patties of Philippines. So even this fermented fish liquefied is used in the fermentation process of many vegetables, like we know kimchi in Korea, China or Japan. The main fermentation procedures are fermentation with salting and drying. That is one way. Then sometimes fermentation and drying but no salting. And the third procedure is fermented with salting but no drying. So here we will briefly discuss about pickling of fish. Pickling is an easy method for preserving fish. Many times it is done at home level in all developed countries. The pickled fish must be stored in the refrigerator, and for best flavor must be used within 4 to 6 weeks. Only a few species of fish are preserved commercially by pickling, but almost any type of fish may be pickled at home. And refrigeration is important for the different stages of pickling process, which we will briefly mention later. So little more details about the pickled fish or pickling of fish. This is not what we say normally in India as a pickle of different vegetables or meat or fish. This is a pickling mostly by using the vinegar. So the components required for pickling of fish is the fresh high quality fish should be used. Water, preferably hot water, should be avoided, which can cause off color and flavor. Then vinegar, it should be distilled white vinegar with an acetic acid content at least 5%. Generally it comes with 10% acetic acid, and this plays the important role for preservation and preventing the bacterial growth. Then salt is another important preservative used in pickling, which should be of high grade, pure quality for pickling of fish. And then salt should not contain calcium or magnesium compounds which may cause off color and flavors in pickled fish. Now we will briefly mention some of the modern emerging technologies. First is the high pressure processing, that is also called as high hydrostatic pressure for preservation. This utilizes the high pressure to inactivate microorganisms and enzymes, and thereby it is a modern preservation technology. Then pulsed light technology. It uses intense flashes of light to kill bacteria and extend the shelf life. Then there is microwave processing, which is relatively common for cooking now. This uses microwaves to heat and cook fish quickly and is a very quick processing and for preservation. And the other technologies like ultrasonic processing, pulsed electric fields, plasma technologies and edible coatings are also being explored, some of the modern techniques. So at a later time I am going to have a separate lecture on all these modern preservation techniques. So here we can see different stages of fish in the fish value chain and in the processing. The raw fish, the different stage of processing, dried fish, smoked fish, ready to cook fish, and further process different kind of fish products. Here we can see the modern automatic shrimp processing line, which is in a large industry because the shrimps and prawns are very high value products. So there is automatic processing lines working in the developed countries. Here we can see the photographs of raw fish and the canning process, the filling and cooking and then sealing and processed canned fish products, which we have discussed in details in a separate lecture. Here we can see the delicious fish preparations of different species or variety of processing, and mostly they are the fried fish by different techniques. So now we are at the end of today's lecture. Briefly I will summarize. So today we have discussed overall different aspect of fish processing or as a overview of fish processing. So initially we have discussed about the raw fish handling and processing, how to cut and clean and eviscerate and making the fillets or frozen fillets, all the different aspects of basic fish processing. And then we have discussed about the preservation of fish, and many of them are both preservation and processing. So we have briefly mentioned about canning, curing, salting, drying, smoking, and later we have discussed different methods of processing the raw fish and for preservation. Then we have discussed some of the techniques which we have not mentioned earlier, like preservation by microbial method or fermentation, and briefly we have discussed about preservation by pickling, and finally we have discussed mentioning briefly about some of the most modern techniques for preservation of fish, and we have seen some of the excellent photographs of different stages of processing. Thank you.